Hey y'all, how's it going? Welcome back to Robert Pattinson March. It is Tuesday, which means it is Twilight Tuesday. And you read the thumbnail, you read the title, you already know what this video is going to be about. I watched Twilight, I rewatched it for the first time in 10 years, and I came to the conclusion that Edward Cullen is a psychopath. Now, hear me out. This is going to be a fun deep dive into Twilight, at least the very first movie, because I do think that Edward Cullen changes as the movies go on. But the first part of the movie, the first part of the saga is so cringeworthy, I just had to talk about it. So coming into this movie, I was looking at it through rose-colored glasses because I'm a product of my environment. I was a teen in the 2010s. I was like, bottle-fed Twilight basically. And especially being a teenage girl, you really kind of sink yourself into the movie and you just become a whole part of it, at least for me. I know I read the first book. I never read the books after that, but I did, with excitement watch every single movie with anticipation. And they cultivated this whole Team Edward versus Team Jacob thing, so the marketing team knew what they were doing. I was always excited about it. I don't think there was ever a time where I was not excited about Twilight while it was running, and so that's what made me so excited to rewatch the saga, because I'm like, I know people give this movie a lot of flack, but I thought I thought it was just because it was a cheesy romance movie, or most time romance movies aren't, top tier cinema, people aren't giving standing ovations and all that stuff. So I just assume when people, were like knocking down Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart's performances, I was like, well, they're just haters. And I want to say, legitimately, I believe Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart wanted to give this performance their all, and somewhere along the way, either a director or producer stepped in and they were like, I'm gonna need you to reel that all the way back. And so we got a lot of the cringe that, made people, I get a tweet, someone said they walked out of the theater when they went to go see this movie. It was so bad. And upon this rewatch, I was like, oh, I get it now. And the biggest problem for me was Edward, and was this romance that they were trying to force upon you, and apparently I just glazed over all of that when I was a teenager. Now, I've watched a lot of romance movies, I read a lot of romance literature, whether it be amateur or professional, and there are just certain beats and certain marks that you have to hit when you are creating a romance story, and it's really about the build-up. Like, the most fun, awesome, interesting part about a romance story is, how are these characters going to develop their relationship? Okay, do they hate each other when they first meet? Is it kind of like a love at first sight thing? And then what actions do they take after that to build up to their ultimate confession? So, all this time I was looking for are they gonna have a cute conversation? Are they gonna be, hanging out and doing homework and, you brush your hand next to his or something like that? There's always just these cute little nuggets that the story drops you, building up these characters. And y'all, I got none of that in Twilight. There was absolutely nothing that I saw that built up to Bedward. There was nothing that I found that said this was a relationship, that this was a healthy relationship, that this was a cute relationship. I mean, by all means, it was a red flag relationship. So let's start with the scene where Edward and Bella first meet, right? Bella comes in from Arizona. She's new to Forks, Washington, and she goes to one of her classes, and she has to sit next to the hot, mysterious guy. And it's like, okay, we're getting somewhere here. And then they have this just really awkward moment where there's a fan blowing, her scent in his direction. And Edward does this thing where he covers his nose as if he was in disgust of her. And quite frankly, I mean, that's what happened. He was disgusted by her and repulsed by her, and she's freaking out and wondering what the heck is going on with me. And it's like, nothing about that first scene is cute or adorable or making me be like, oh, these two, oh my gosh, I was watching Cinema Therapy and they were talking about, there should be in romance, there's always this meet cute moment, that's what they call it, and the scene just gives none of that. It doesn't set us up for anything. Now, how would I change this scene? I would probably add in, because we know that he's a vampire, so he has an enhanced sense of enhanced sense of smell. So what would that look like in a more cute kind of romantic way, right? Well, maybe, you know, he's biting his fist, but he's like, oh, you know, it's irresistible, it's too much, he's ready to boil over, like, you know, and she's like, what did I do to him? Like something like that, where it's just, you know, like, what's more romantic, a heavenly scent or a gross scent? Like, that's the difference in that scene. So then up next, as we get more evidence of Edward being a bit of a psychopath, we have him approaching Bella in the hallway and then again at lunch, and the scenes maybe are not completely similar, but essentially the gist is that he's just straight up rude to her. He's a jerk to her, and it's not a good look, right? There should be nothing attractive about a man, you know, I guess they say nice guys finish last, but there's nothing attractive about a guy talking down to you or being rude to you or being a jerk to you. Now, I know that Edward, in theory, theoretically uses this rudeness as a mask, you know, as like, you know, he has no other way to deal with his feelings for her but to be, you know, put up his walls and to be this person who is like that. But if you're going to be that way, then that also means at some point we're going to have this reveal where the walls come down, and, you know, there's either a confession or with the profession of their love where he comes clean and, you know, you kind of understand why he was treating you that way and all is forgiven. We'll get to that part later, but there's one more scene I want to talk to before we get to that scene. So the car scene, another almost horrendous example, and the subsequent scenes that follow from the car scene where Edward, you know, is just kind of very far away. Bella is in the parking lot and one of her friends comes barreling at her in a car, and Edward uses his superhuman strength and speed to save her, and she's like, WTF just happened? And following those scenes, you know, she goes to the hospital and they're at the field trip, and she knows something is up. And of course, again, Edward has to be deflective of that because he doesn't want to reveal that he's a vampire. But the way that he does it, friends, the way that he does it, he is still so mean to her, to the point where he just straight up gaslights her. Like, there's no other way around explaining what happens, but he gaslights her. You know, in the explanation again, he's like, well, maybe, you know, your eyes are playing tricks on you, or, you know, it wasn't that way, or you're delirious. And then, not only that, but he goes on to say something along the lines of, well, no one would ever believe you. Like, folks, there is nothing sexy or romantic about this, and at this point, we're almost halfway through the movie. Now, after all of that, after all the slapping around that Bella gets and the rough treatment from him, I call this part Bella's down bad, because she really is to have to be able to want to stick with Edward after all this evidence. So we do get to this point, this culmination point, you know, this peak that I was talking about, where all of these scenes are supposed to build up, and then we get our payoff when the characters express their love for one another, right? It's always awesome, and it's this point where, you know, the walls begin to come down, the trust is built, right? We might have seen the characters hanging out with each other, you know, talking, laughing, easing up. And when you get that declaration of love or even apology, right? You know, I admit I was wrong, this is why this happened. They've earned that as characters because they've put in the work as, you know, building that relationship. And we as viewers, you know, that's rewarding for us as well, because we earned that payoff. Doesn't happen in Twilight. So here's how it really goes down in that scene, right? Everyone knows the scene. Say it out loud. Vampire, right? So Edward brings Bella into the woods. We're about to have this big moment where everything is revealed. And I was really, truly, and God forgive me for expecting anything better out of this movie, I was expecting there to be a heart-to-heart where Edward is, you know, letting down that bad boy persona, and he just comes to Bella and he says, look, you know these things about me. I had to be defensive. You know, I think that I'm a bit of a monster, and I know you might think this about me and you don't want to be with me. And, you know, she might say, well, no. Here's how it actually played out. It plays out more like a horror scene, because as she says, you know, you're a vampire, he's like, well, you know, answer me this, what do we drink? And she's like, you know, it's blood. And he asks, are you afraid? And the way that he delivers this line, again, no disrespect to the King Robert Pattinson, I think this was directorial or something went amiss, but he delivers that line without remorse. He delivers it like a supervillain, like he's the Riddler or something like that. Like, are you afraid? And he's got this intense look in his eyes, where it should be more like, you know, are you afraid? I'm revealing myself to you. I'm being vulnerable, and I really hope that you would accept me. But it's still hard for him to put that down, because the only reasonable explanation is that he's a psychopath. Then, dear watcher, it gets even worse from there, because you would think finally he's happy, he's revealed all this to Bella, and he can ease up. But the cringe just kicks up, right? He goes and he's like, there's something I need you to see. And he just books it, you know, to the edge of a cliff, and goes into the sunlight and reveals how sparkly he is. And she's like, oh, you're beautiful. And he's like, no, I'm hideous. That scene, I'm sure 99% of the audience cannot take seriously, because he's building himself up as a monster and he looks like a Care Bear, for crying out loud. Like, that's where I started to say, oh man, I'm really losing watching this movie. Everything that I was hoping it would be, you know, all the critics were right. And then Edward continues his cringe fest. I mean, he's throwing a fit. He's being a little baby, and he literally, you know, going on and on about how he's a monster, and he rips a tree out of the ground and throws it. And he's you know, telling her things like, I was designed to kill. Red flag, you know. And Bella says, I don't care. But Bella, you should. You should. Like, what is not adding up in your little mind right now? Like, there is no reason for her not to think that he's a psychopath. Like, the whole entire time, he has done nothing good for her. He has done nothing good to her. So the fact that you trust him just makes me question Bella's sanity as well, because at this point, again, the only thing that Edward Cullen has going for him is that he is super insanely hot. Like, seriously, by all means, there are more red flags at a Chinese parade. It is bad. And eventually, finally, we let up in this moment where she's like, so did you hate me, or why did you hate me? And he was like, yeah, you know, I hated you because he's like, you know, you were very addicting to me. He's like, you're my heroine. And it's like, okay, we finally get a confession to him, but it's like maybe 30 seconds long, and it has zero impact, and it has zero weight, and that's all the relief we get as an audience. Now, here's where things take a surprising turn, because this movie has imposter syndrome if I've ever seen it, because we as the audience are made to believe now that Bella and Edward should be in love with each other, and that it's cute, and he takes her to his house, and he protects her and makes sure that she eats dinner. And I'm just, you know, it's all been a mirage, and at this point we've been gaslighted by this movie. So it's either that, or again, we just have to come to believe that Bella is just also as psychopathic or mentally unstable as he is, for creating this narrative that he's romantic and that he for some reason loves her. So it's just baffling to see her react in such a nonchalant way, like, he pushed me, but, you know, at least it saved my life. It's cool. I've got a cast, but it's cool, when it is the exact opposite of cool. It is so not cool. It's scorching hot. Anyway, the problem deepens now, because even I am starting to lose my sanity. I've got maybe 2 or 3 brain cells supporting me at this time, and now even I am starting to buy into the romance by the end of the movie, because eventually Bella is heading off to prom, and of course Edward takes her, and, you know, she's got a little cast. And not only that, you know, then they go out and they're out on the gazebo, and it's, you know, it's a really intense scene, and they're eye to eye, and you've got the lights and the music, and it is cute. It's so freaking cute, and I hate it. It's like, because the whole time we have been starved, absolutely starved for cute content like this, cute little moments, and, you know, now that they're finally giving it to us, and we certainly didn't earn it. We certainly didn't earn any of this cute stuff, but at the same time, I'm lapping it up out of their hands, because it's all that I've gotten in this movie, and I'm desperate. Meanwhile, I haven't even talked about Jacob Black, who had been an absolute cinnamon roll in this entire movie, and for the most part, there's no way that Bella, like, would not go with Jacob in this film. Like, I think in New Moon there are some red flags that Jacob starts to show, but logistically, insanely speaking, Jacob was like nothing but cordial to Bella the whole entire time. He cared for her. He was, you know, worried about her being with the Cullens since they were vampires and all of those things. And so it just should have been the obvious choice that Jacob was the choice for Bella. And I guess she just burrowed herself into her mind and had just, you know, made it up that, hey, Edward Cullen is for me. And, you know, by that point, it was like one of the first of many L's that Jacob would be taking in his Twilight Saga career. All that being said, funny enough, after getting past the initial hump of the first movie, I actually enjoyed watching the rest of the Twilight Saga, and I especially thought Eclipse and then Breaking Dawn Part 2 were more of the stronger movies, and I honestly was expecting to talk about the whole saga in this video, and I ended up talking about how much I was annoyed at Edward's behavior in the first movie. So if you would like to hear my thoughts on why I thought Twilight was remarkably better in the next 3 films, or however many films there were, let me know in the comments, and I might actually work on that. I'm excited to talk about it for sure. And be sure to give me a like as well if you enjoyed this and just want more Robert Pattinson March content. Subscribe for more, and stay around, and I'll see you in the next video.